Good day, my name is Neil Langner. I'm from DAR Automotive, and I'm here to demonstrate some very ingenious tooling from the company Vigor in Germany. Okay, so today I'd like to demonstrate to you how we're going to remove a compact bearing in situ in the motor on the vehicle. Normally this is a job that in most workshops the entire unit is removed and it's done on a press, and it can take up to 3 hours long. With our method you can do it on the vehicle, and we'll make a 3-hour job into a half-an-hour job maximum. Okay, so before we start our pulley removal process, let's look at the inner workings of a bearing assembly. And what we want to do today is to remove this bearing and to install a new one in a manner that will not damage the new bearing. Very important is to in the removal and installation process that we work in parallel lines. Okay, also important to note that a compact bearing assembly, this is the configuration, where in a normal bearing assembly you have the hub and the bearing as two separate components. So the work set that we need, supplied by Vigor, comes in a complete set. Here you see the removal fingers for removing the compact bearing, and this one is for the installation of the compact bearing. One can also operate the system either with a simple spindle device or alternatively with a pneumatic piston. When one employs the pneumatic piston, then it is recommended to either use a foot pump or a pneumatic foot control to regulate the movement of the pneumatic piston. It's also important to note that if you already have a pneumatic piston set, this is used on many of our tool sets and can be used with this tool set that's on display today. We do sell the tool sets in various sizes with various capacity pressures, and or you can use if you have them in your existing toolbox already. Okay, so for the installation and removal set, these are the loose components. These 2 feet are for the removal, and these 2 are for the installation process. We're going to start with the removal process first, and we assemble our removal mechanism as follows. We place the cross member on the feet, we put our lock nuts in place, not tightening them too much. Okay, so first we're going to start with the adjustable foot set. It's adjustable up to 95 millimeters and can thus adjust for varying size flanges. And it's important that we note this is the removal tool, the removal set. So I'm going to now demonstrate to you how we will apply the removal set as a starting sequence to removing the existing bearing. So quite simply start at the top, locate the top. Further, it's important to note that our location on the flange is even, so that the gap at the top and the bottom is about the same, and then we can set the screws to fix them in place, and now I have a nice parallel setup. Next, I'd like to show you from the front. You can see everything is set up from the front, and then from this side here, it's important to note that the feet are pressing against this flange, flush against the flange. The tool is adjustable, you can move it around, and it's seated against the flange. I'd like to show you that this conical washer fits perfectly into the back of the bearing, and because of its conical shape, it will automatically locate and sit flush on the bearing as we pull it out. It will be held in place by a lock nut in the back, and from the front we will then pull the bearing out. So next we have, in the removal process, the next step is to either use the manual spindle, inserting the manual spindle at the back, securing with the conical spacer and the lock nut, and then using a normal ratchet to pull the bearing out. Today we are not going to use the mechanical spindle. We are going to replace that with a instead we're going to use the pneumatic cylinder. Insert the pneumatic cylinder, insert the conical nut, ensuring that the cone faces inwards, and then locking the nut firmly in place at the back so that it seats tightly against the back of the bearing. Then we are going to connect our pneumatic hose system and through the use of a foot control, you can see the bearing being removed. And it is out. So now we can undo the nut at the back. And we've successfully removed the compact bearing. So next I'm going to show you how to change the fingers for the removal process to those for the installation process. Again, simply loosening the back of these lock nuts, remove them completely. Now we place the new fingers in position, and we can place the bridge in place. Again, installing the lock nuts. And now our tool is ready to start the installation process. Okay, so next step we're going to do the installation process. Again, the adjustable fingers on the installation equipment. This is adjustable from 62 to 95 millimeter bearings. Also important to note that these fingers will locate on the back end of the bearing and not on the flange. So when we install the bearing, we're tightening up the fingers to sit and be seated against the back end of the bearing. Next is important that we adjust left and right and have a similar gap, so that again our installation process is in beautiful parallel lines and we don't cause damage to the new bearing during the installation process. So important to maintain the two gaps evenly on either side, and then to lock the positions in place by the top locks. Now the fingers are beautifully located on the flange of the bearing, and we are ready to proceed with the installation. So again, we're going to make use of the pneumatic cylinder and position the pneumatic cylinder at the point of the flange where we want to install. At the back, we are going to locate this plate and again the lock nut. At the top of the plate there is a small gap through which the sensor of the ABS sensor is protected. So we'll move this into position, tighten it up, hand tight, making sure that our setup is parallel, and then we can engage. You will note that the installation will proceed up to a point where the fingers of our tool will prevent it from going any further, and that's to maintain the exact distance. So now our new bearing is installed, and we can loosen up and remove our equipment.